The complex legacy of African Bambaataa, or is it? It could just be that. It could just be that the man is a straightforward NONCE of the lowest rank and file, a lowlife, and there's nothing complex about it. But let's just take it step by step, and analyze the actual heading which I put up there. But anyhow, Afrika Bambaataa, looking at someone who, one of the pioneering forces of hip hop. Okay? So when I'm doing this, I'm going to do this from a very subjective point of view. Okay? Before we get to the real issue, the real elephant in the room, as it were. But as it stands, Afrika Bambaataa, head of the Zulu nation, and one of the pioneers of hip hop. As those who know me know, I'm a hip hop aficionado. Okay, I go back to the I don't personally go back to the very beginning, but obviously in my teenage years, it was all about electro funk, and the start of the starting history of what has now transpired to be hip hop. Back in the day, it was more electro, okay, and not so much that, but with the pioneers, okay. We're looking at the pioneers of hip hop, okay. We're looking at not only Afrika Bambaataa, but Grandmaster Flash, Kool Herc being a Jamaican, if I'm not mistaken, and Grandmaster Flash being a Bajan from Barbados, okay. So with Afrika Bambaataa, if we look at the history of this, it was obviously a case of him being part of that Bronx gang, the Black Spades, okay. Then obviously he elevated things, and there was a transition from the Black Spades to what is now known globally as the Zulu nation, okay. This was where all forms of genre were embodied, musically, in terms of Bambaataa. So what we have with the funk, the emerging hip hop, soul, okay. But with the movement itself, what we have is the Black Spades transitioning into Zulu Nation, and where they were previously more predominantly a black power movement with elements of some violence. Going from what I know from history, they became more of a peaceful organization promoting peace and more of a unified, unity-based approach, as it were. Okay, and then from there, what spirals from what makes Bambaataa's legacy is those four elements of hip hop, okay, which emerge from that. Obviously, we've got the breakdancing, body popping, the graffiti art, obviously, the turntablism, and those that work the mic, okay? So from there, you had, the forefathers, then we have those like Grand Mix of the ST, then there's obviously the breakdance element. You've seen breakdance, the film, Turbo, of course, people like Crazy Legs, Baby Love, there was that element, the dancing element, graffiti artists, Phase 2, Futura 2000, we're talking history here, you know what I mean? And then from there, obviously, Bambaataa, classics, Renegade of Funk, with the famous album cover, of the cartoon, with black superheroes, Planet Rock, of course, come on, looking for a perfect beat, right? So this is a landmark legacy we're talking about here, This is a landmark legacy. Okay, but like many legacies, in many cases, things become tarnished. Okay, so where Bambaataa and the Soul Solid Force, him, Mr. Biggs, GLOBE, of course, They may actually know more. They actually may know something as well. Another conversation. But this is where we look at other elements of people's legacy. Okay, and yeah, this is where we get to that turn in the road. Okay, now many allegations have been made against Afrika Bambaataa. Okay, now I'm going to say this: these allegations, but from what I know from a very, 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 very reliable source, even by profession, I'm not going to mention the names, even by profession, they're reliable. Yeah, and I know this from more than one source, that when Bambaataa was in London, young boys of a light-skinned mixed hue were going in and out of his hotel. And that's listen, I don't talk no shit. People hearing that will know that word is bond, as you say in America. I don't chat no shit. My French. I don't chat no shit. Okay, but I'm leaving that there. Okay. I have respect for not him, but the people that he's allegedly, quote, abused. Okay, so let's just stick a pin there, leave that there. Okay, but it's been said that in the States, well, it's been said in the States that allegations have been made against him as well. Be it Hassan Campbell, whose videos I recall when he first came out making his videos, his allegations, and at the time it was heavy stuff. Okay, it was shocking stuff. But the thing is, the people around Bambaataa, many of them held their hands up. Many weren't exactly saying it was true or not. They just held their hands up and said, we feel sorry for the victims, which by default means that it was probably true. Okay. I mean, I'm not one to. I don't gossip. I don't talk. No, let's just talk. There's no feminine business here. But do feel free to Google CFO, London Posse, Bambaataa. Okay. Now those in the know who CFO is. He was the human beatboxer for the London Posse. Okay. Now, sadly, he's no longer here. Okay. Now, feel free to Google and make of what you will. Okay. So in effect, don't come at me, the messenger. You can read it and see for yourself. But as it stands, back to Bambaataa, yeah, it's not good. A lot of allegations and some very strong to near enough factual allegations that were observed over here in London when he was here. This would be many years after. Talking quite recently, actually. As maybe as late as 5 or 6 years ago, when he was there the last time. Okay? Okay? That's all I'm going to say. But ultimately, in terms of that, then does this affect his legacy? Yes, in my books. Because it's tainted. Yes, he's a pioneer of hip-hop alongside Kool Herc and Flash. Yes, he contributed to the elements of hip-hop. By the same token, much has been said. Much has been said regarding this. For me, it taints his legacy and leaves a stain on hip-hop. Okay? Just looking at a few comments. Here's one. Just read his wiki page. My understanding is that he set the Zulu nation up with the intentions to obtain access to vulnerable children. The more power he gained, the more kids he could promise DJ careers, etc. in exchange for favors. NONCE blueprint, a nonce blueprint, dare I say it, and should be treated no different to Savile, etc. The allegations stretch back to the 70s and the lives he must have ruined. Okay. Yes, I must bear in mind that some of his victims have been alleged to be young, which is unacceptable. Unacceptable. So having considered that now in mind, tainted, very tainted. And what's worse now is reading that is some people are actually going to spin that and say he made the Zulu Nation up to obtain access to children. That's not good. That's not good at all. That's not good at all. Another comment. As a teen who spent his formative years scribbling graffiti and breakdancing badly, his cultural impact was huge. Correct. I bought my first little Casio sample keyboard because of the tracks like Planet Rock. But that was a long time ago, and his behaviour since is unforgivable. Evidence has emerged of his even early creative period being exploited as part of his grooming and R-ing process. Whitewashing that with the sanitised statement, his legacy is complex, okay, is a massive understatement and somewhat a slap in the face for his surviving victims. Correct. Okay. His legacy is complex. I'm just stating that for the purposes of TikTok and YouTube. If you want my real opinion, he's an N. And obviously, should burn in HELL. But hey, it is what it is. So disappointed to read about his abhorrent acts. Another record in my collection that is tainted by SA or questionable politics. Put in a corner with Rolf Harris, oh dear, Jonathan King, John Peel, Gary Glitter, and a gaggle of media presenters. Not good. Not good. Complex, he let his victims down and the scene. He was a nonce. Oh dear. So there you have it. A rather interesting life. Well, not interesting. I'm just being trying to be nice for the sake of TikTok and YouTube. Read between the lines. You know what I think about them kind of people. Is what it is. Later.